And greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. I'm here at the Home Command, otherwise known as the WASP Sanctuary. Not that we have seen any yet, but because we're not sure that the new studio that we are working on as we speak, thank you to the Blaze for that, will be ready to go before WASP season returns. So we've got our ace engineer, Rob Chickering, here in town, and we're testing out, gentlemen, the upgraded in-home studio they have given me today, just in case I have to put my life on the line for America again, like I did last summer. Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre back there in the comfy confines, yet to be WASP infested home studio. How are you guys doing there? You guys good?
We're good. Yeah. Nice. No worries. Nothing to see here. All good. Fine here. How are you?
Yeah, Todd, I haven't told you this yet. I actually encouraged Steve to go to his studio because I just don't think I have another WASP. Hey, Aaron, quickly build a studio in the next room. You have 5 minutes. I just don't have another one of those.
Last year it was about Steve's mental health. This year it's about your mental health.
Correct.
This is what we're doing.
Correct.
Tough. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, fair. I mean, tough. Yeah, tough but fair. I mean, let's. We killed 14 wasps in one day. Well, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
You guys,
there's
killed
no
14
we.
wasps.
There's no we
in one day last year. One day. Okay. Yeah, there is no we on this. Correct. There is no we. You're right. That's why I corrected myself. I self-edited. Give me credit. All right. I took a step back, recognized. Okay. But see, even Erzin is not complaining about me wimping out because he had to help kill 14 wasps in one day. Even Erzin was like, all right, this is ridiculous. All right. This is like the Amityville Horror with the flies. All right. So we're testing out that new studio today, but you can, of course, still, hopefully, you'll enjoy today's program, brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. You've heard me talk about them for a while now. And Patriot Mobile's been on the cutting edge of the parallel economy. And if you haven't made the switch yet, maybe one reason is why I didn't make the switch for a couple of years, even while I was promoting them. It's just going to be a big inconvenience. You know, we've got multiple accounts and mobile phones and numbers. And then one day T-Mobile sent that mass text out telling us all during COVID they're going to start editing our own personal text for misinformation. And I called Patriot Mobile that day and said, listen, man, I'm in. I can't do this anymore. Now, maybe some of you also are like, I haven't made the switch yet just because I'm locked into these, cotton picking contracts. Well, did you know that Patriot Mobile offers up to $500 of a contract buyout per device? So they're giving you all the incentives you need to sign up with a company that doesn't hate you. They'll give you all the same coverage you get from the companies that do. You can still get started with a free month of service when you go to patriotmobile.com/Deace and use the promo code Deace. That's patriotmobile.com/Deace using the promo code Deace. And also want to let you know, if you're looking for a very unique Mother's Day gift, our friend and colleague Allie Stuckey has her next Share the Arrows event coming up here later this year. And this is maybe something a little bit more meaningful than those pretty flowers you get mom every year. And hey, those are great too, and she loves those. Or, some piece of jewelry or, some great chocolate. But this is a chance that will actually nourish her soul and give her a chance to strengthen her walk with Christ and enjoy the fellowship of other women just like her. Go to sharethearrows.com. Grab your tickets now. That's sharethearrows.com, because nothing says I appreciate you like giving her a weekend filled with worship and fellowship at sharethearrows.com. That's where you can go for that. All right, where you can go for us today is for some coverage on what's happening in the Middle East. Dr. Michael Youssef will join us talking about that coming up at the bottom of the hour, and want to get his take on this debate that's happening over Iran right now on the right. So we'll talk about that coming up at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, we're going to pick up, I think it's verse 12 in chapter 8 of Romans, as we continue our ongoing Theology Thursday study of at least my favorite book in the New Testament. I happen to think it's the greatest theological treatise written in the history of mankind, and that's Paul's letter to the church in Rome. So we'll pick up that Theology Thursday for you next hour, but let's kick this thing off, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Out with the Old and with the New. President Trump withdrew his nomination of Dr. Janet Neshewat for Surgeon General yesterday and replaced her with Casey Means. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said, quote, Dr. Casey Means has the potential to be one of the finest Surgeon Generals in United States history. Congratulations to Casey. Secretary Kennedy looks forward to working with Dr. Janet Neshewat in another capacity at HHS. The announcement of Means for Surgeon General instantly made her into a lightning rod on social media last night, with MAHA seemingly split on whether she's a plant and a hack or just a great pick. In other news, Trump announced this morning the first full trade deal since his Liberation Day tariffs, a deal reached with the United Kingdom. Trump said the deal includes billions of dollars of increased access to British markets for ag exports especially, and the Brits are knocking down some non-tariff trade barriers as well. The man who saved Obamacare, Chief Justice John Roberts of the Supreme Court, wants you to know it's his job to be the neutral arbiter of the truth.
In our Constitution, judges and the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government, separate from the others, with the authority to interpret the Constitution as law and strike down, obviously, acts of Congress or acts of the president. And that innovation doesn't work if it's not, the judiciary is not independent. Its job is to obviously decide cases, but in the course of that, check the excesses of Congress or of the executive, and that does require a degree of independence.
What do you think of these calls for impeachment of judges based on the decisions that they've made?
Well, I've already spoken to that, and you know, impeachment is not how you register disagreement with decisions.
That's what you're for, right? That's what you're there for.
That's what we're there for. Yeah.
Roberts made those comments in a rare public appearance in his hometown of Buffalo, New York. Border Czar Tom Homan says there's a lot more work to be done on deportations.
What's your total deportation so far?
Well over 100,000. I mean, I looked at the ICE arrests.
You're over 100,000 now.
Yeah.
So you wanted to take the worst first. Have you gone through the worst?
No, we got a long ways to go.
Well, who else is left?
Well, when we started this thing, it's just shy of 700,000 illegal aliens in this country with a criminal conviction or pending criminal charges. So we got a lot of work to do. I looked at the numbers the other day, just yesterday. ICE interior enforcement arrests are just below 75,000, which is 3 times more than Biden did in the same time frame when he was president. So ICE is making a lot of arrests, but there's more work to do.
Checking in on the Beehive State, which became the first state in the union to recently ban the use of any flag symbolizing sexual degeneracy from government buildings. Naturally, Salt Lake City didn't take kindly to that. Here's KTVX-TV in Salt Lake City.
Tomorrow, a new state law goes into effect. It would ban pride flags from public buildings like schools or city halls. But tonight, the Salt Lake City Council approved a workaround. Incorporate the pride flag into an official variant of the city flag. Now, it's not just the pride flag either. Flags representing Juneteenth and another for transgender pride will be adorned with Salt Lake's traditional Seago lily design. These flags are meant to bypass the limits. Again, House Bill 77, as they'll be adopted as official city flags. Here's the reason Mayor Aaron Mendenhall gave for the new proposal.
I want each and every resident to look up at any flag that flies at City Hall and be reminded that their community values belonging and acceptance, and that their community values every one of them. Let the Sago Lily send a simple but powerful message. Salt Lake City is here for you. We believe in you, and we love you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So that is a unanimous support.
And finally, Bernie Sanders on private jets.
We've spent millions of dollars in campaign funds on private jet travel over the years. How do you push back on both of those things?
When's the last time you saw Donald Trump during a campaign mode at National Airport?
No, it doesn't. But he's also not fighting the oligarchy.
No. When you run a campaign and you do 3 or 4 or 5 rallies in a week, the only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. Think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United waiting, 30,000 people are waiting? That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that.
And that's what happened while we were away.
He doesn't have to apologize. He's better than you. He's more important than you are. He's a communist. Aaron's Montage brought to you by friends over at Field of Greens. Just one simple lifestyle upgrade we can all make. Field of Greens. Enjoy a delicious glass of doctor-formulated Field of Greens each day, and you're going to feel amazing. Plus, your doctor may notice your improved health as well, or your money back. This Field of Greens customer wrote that he just had the best blood work he's had in a decade. My doctor said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Well, what he was doing was Field of Greens. Each fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens was doctor selected to support vital organs like heart, liver, kidneys, metabolism, immune systems, and healthy blood cells. So let's get you started with 20% off and free shipping if you're the kind of person that is on the go a lot, especially you're thinking, man, I just don't have time to cultivate all that produce at home. Well, now you can do it with our friends at Field of Greens. Visit fieldofgreens.com. Use my code Steve to get 20% off and free shipping. 20% off and free shipping with my code Steve at fieldofgreens.com, code Steve. All right. I want to begin with John Roberts, if we could. I want to talk about the state of the judiciary and the state of MAHA. And that clip that Aaron provided you, let me summarize it for you. The Chief Justice of the United States believes he's a god, and he cannot be held accountable, and that he is the final word on everything. That's essentially what he said in that clip. Said he's independent of the other two branches. Well, how are you independent of the other two branches if you rely on them solely for everything you can do? Judges cannot appoint themselves. They cannot confirm themselves. They cannot fund themselves. Nor can they impose any particular action or edict. Let's just take this out of this conversation for a moment. And suppose somebody came to you and said, hey, I'm independent of you. Now, I can't exist without you. I have no provision without you. I have no ability to act on what I believe without you. Would that sound like an independent being to you? Only if you're retarded or maybe a sociopath. They're the only branch that is actually dependent, and that was done for a reason. His definition of independence is not the definition that the founders had. The founders had independent as in a branch that also was given the ability to uphold the God-given rights of the people. His version of independence is a branch that is independent of the will of the people and will determine their God-given rights for them. Really independent of any system of accountability whatsoever. There can be none. There can be no check and balance. They are a check and balance unto themselves. Also, do yourself a favor, will you? He said, hey, the Constitution gives us the power to strike down things. Do yourself a favor. Won't take you very long, I promise you. Just run the Constitution through any AI program and look up the words strike down or struck down.
This is the crucial point right here. This is the crucial point. And see how many times... Thank you. See how many times the words strike down or struck down are found anywhere within the Constitution of the United States of America. I'll wait, go. And you're done because the answer is 0. Those words are never found anywhere in there. They're not even actually even implied. And in fact, if you read Federalists 78 and 81 written by Alexander Hamilton himself, in response to the anti-Federalists who were afraid that one day people like me would be forced to say things like what I am saying to you right now. I mean, there may not have been anything the Federalists and Anti-Federalists fought over more than the nature and power of the judiciary. And in response to Anti-Federalists predicting that one day there'd be some schmuck sitting in his comic book sports bro basement in the suburb of Des Moines, Iowa, kvetching about tyrannical judges and black-robed tyrants. In response to the Anti-Federalists prophesying, correctly I might add, Alexander Hamilton wrote Federalists 78 and 81, talking about why there is no power to tax and spend or raise an army by the courts. Now, why did he single those two out? Because they're the two most sweeping, intrusive powers that any government can have, to conscript you and take your agency away and make you fight in its wars against your will, or to essentially debase your currency and your prosperity and productivity and claim it as its own. So the judiciary has no such power. That's why we don't want it to have power. That's why we exempted it from the two biggest powers. Who declares a war? Congress does. Who taxes and spends? Congress does. Who sends the troops into battle? The president does. The two branches we elect, they were given those powers. And then furthermore, Hamilton writes that the courts have neither force nor will. They just do advice and consent. They advise and consent. But they cannot act. The federal courts he's talking about with the lifetime appointments. It's part of the U.S. judicial branch in the federal government. They're not given any power. James Uthmeyer, we talked about this yesterday, the attorney general in Florida. He is defying a federal judge's order. Why has he not been arrested and held in contempt yet? Well, who's the judge going to send? She's going to have to send U.S. Marshals. The Trump administration would have to agree to go and arrest the Republican attorney general from the state of Florida. She can't do it herself. She can't send Rusty the bailiff after James Uthmeyer. She can't do it. Well, Steve, there's local sheriffs. You're right. Guess who they work for? The executive branch. Ron DeSantis would have to do that. He's not going to do that. So then what power does this judge have by which to enforce her edicts? The founding fathers would have to be complete idiots to give final authoritative say over you and I's way of life to people who have no ability whatsoever to enforce their say. By doing that, they'd turn us into plebes, slaves. Wait, you gave the most power to the people who can do the least to help us? What sense does that make? You know why it doesn't make any sense? Take a guess. Take a guess. Take a guess why it doesn't make any sense. Because it doesn't make any sense, and it's not what they did. But John Roberts has been to an American law school in the last 100 years, except for like 3 places. So he was taught that the courts determine their own jurisdiction. They are their own. They are a law unto themselves, as another lawyer, St. Paul, once famously said, but not in the same context that John Roberts means it, of course. You need to hear this. Need to know this. We cannot survive as a republic like this. We are dying as a republic primarily because of this. Power is where power goes. We are not a nation of laws, and we never have been. We're a nation of political will, and we always will be. This judicial insurrection will not stop itself. It will have to be stopped. Unfortunately, we lack a movement to do so currently. We have pockets of resistance. Shows like this. The Florida Attorney General. Some people that I met with and spoke to in the White House just last week. But there is no real movement yet for something like this. One of the things that we have struggled to do on the right routinely is sustain any movement. Though it has its own variations and themes, in many respects, MAGA is just the latest iteration of what have been numerous internal, right-of-center resistance groups, disruption groups. The sect that I primarily hail from was really the first one. The so-called religious right. An entirely new political coalition created out of disgust and disdain for Roe v. Wade. And a Catholic by the name of Paul Weyrich built an institution known as the Heritage Foundation and aligned with Protestant leaders like D. James Kennedy and Jerry Falwell Sr. and Pat Robertson and Billy Graham and others, and essentially created the third leg of Reagan's three-legged stool and provided the margin of victory for the Reagan Revolution. That eventually died out. It still exists as a significant coalition within the Republican Party, but it's not a ruling presence by virtue of the fact, as we pointed out on our overtime the other day. I mean, Pam Bondi's DOJ is arguing the same position on the baby killer pill that the Joe Biden administration did. A series of grifts, sellouts, failure to pass on. Let's just say Jerry Falwell Jr. didn't turn out to be anything like Jerry Falwell Sr. and leave it at that. And so now this mass of voters exists, but they're largely leaderless. That happened in the 80s. Fast forward, the next iteration of this came a decade ago, the Tea Party. It didn't last long at all. That lasted 2 midterms and just was completely, that also came at the advent of the digital revolution, the digital era. The ability for the first time, now that Fox News proved in the 90s, and Rush with what he birthed with talk radio in the 80s, and then the shows that came about in the 90s after him, and some of the great titans in the history of this in our movement. 2 of them we work with today. Mark Levin, the great one, Glenn Beck. These guys and their immense success demonstrated for another generation the amount of revenue that could be generated off of this political ideology. But see, unlike what happened with Mark and Glenn, who were kind of the, if we use Rush as the mosaic figure here, and the people that came immediately after him as Glenn and Mark and Sean Hannity and that group are kind of your Joshua or apostolic era that immediately came afterwards. What's happened since is an inverse of that paradigm. See, those guys got exceedingly wealthy and built successful careers off of their ability to successfully and persuasively communicate our ideals. Meaning they were really smart and really good at this and then got wealthy as a result. What's happened in the Tea Party was the first advent of this. What's happened since is really dumb people figured out if I just say a few buzzwords, particularly if I'm black while saying them, if I'm not white while saying them, if I'm gay, if I'm not straight. So because everybody, the boomers need to be absolved of 40 years of false claims of racism, and the millennials need to be absolved of a decade of false claims of homophobia. So if you can be, especially if you can be a non-straight white male, please, and say these things, just give me my buzzwords in a pithy video I can share. You can ratchet up to stardom. And we first started seeing this phenomenon, this engagement phenomenon with the Tea Party. And that's why the Tea Party petered out fast. Just overrun by grifters. Faster than you can say that single syllable word. Now, MAGA is the next iteration of this. And by virtue, it created a candidacy in Trump, or he created MAGA the first time, any way you want to look at it. But the fact that it was able to sustain itself for the 4 years that Trump was out of office and still launch him to a dominant win in the last primary, and then give him the building block for a coalition to win a presidential election. And you can thank the Elon Musks and the Theo Vons of the world and the Joe Rogans of the world. They kind of added to Trump's existing coalition, and that's what put him over the top and won him the popular vote. What we are wondering is, how far can MAGA exist, though, without a charismatic, compelling vehicle like Trump? And we'll find out. Probably through J.D. Vance. And now we have another movement. Now, this one, though, is unique because it is not exclusively birthed out of a right-of-center sect. And this is MAHA. And in many respects, you can trace the origins of MAHA almost, Todd, correct me if I'm this, am I wrong, but I mean, MAHA is almost as old as the religious right.
Yeah.
Because you go back to 1986 and the advent of the liability shields for the manufacturing or the pharmaceutical manufacturers and what's transpired since then. At the very least, MAHA, you could say, was probably birthed in the 1990s. It's the movement that came between the religious right and of the 80s and the Tea Party of the late 2000s and early 2010s. But it has remained largely a fringe until COVID. And now it also played a role in putting Trump over the top. Especially when it came to the popular vote. And I have been very fascinated going back to the beginning of this year how MAHA was going to handle now having real power. And I think the jury is still out on this. Like most of America, I first heard about Callie Means through Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. If Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson are now places where the CIA goes to drop psyops, by the end of today, close of business, you guys are all going to be receiving a goodbye, cruel world note from me, and this will be my last show. I'm signing off. There's nowhere we can go. We're just done. Okay. I mean, if Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson are now the launch pads for CIA deep state embedded double agent psyops, then we might as well all just blow our brains out here, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. At this point, I think even Todd would just sign off on becoming sports bros, because the entire process here is just holistically unsalvageable. Cash out while you can.
I would sign off.
But I saw a lot of those. 100%. I saw a lot of those posts in my social media feed yesterday. Now, I'm not against investigating these people, vetting these people. But, you know, we talked a lot about vindication and the thirst trap of vindication on this show with that Michael Foster piece a couple days ago. And I do think when you have been marginalized for as long as many of these MAHA people have, and hey, I did not take you seriously probably even until the spring of 21. And I was leading the charge of the Light Brigade against lockdowns and masks for a year before I probably started taking you guys seriously comprehensively. But when you've been marginalized for as long as people like you guys have, you kind of have an embedded identity because of that. And you have to, the temptation is to view bandwagon jumpers as suspicious and traitors. Every team, by the way, folks, needs bandwagon jumpers. You ever notice that stadiums are way more full when the team is good than when the team is not? Not a coincidence. You have to have bandwagon jumpers. You want to be good enough, relevant enough that people think, hey, that's where I want to be. Because most people, and frankly, all of us, are like sheep, easily led astray. But now, I mean, my feed this morning, this is a psyop of a psyop of a psyop. And then the people saying that are the psyop of the psyop of the psyop. Then I don't know enough of these people to know, are you just really pissed off because your person didn't get picked, who probably couldn't get approved anyway if we were really being honest about it? And back and forth we go. And I'm just going to tell you, there's a fine line for any movement between selling your soul and taking yes for an answer. Now, the Tea Party and the religious right sold its soul. What I fear MAHA may fail is the test of, can you take yes for an answer? And at some point, you have to govern. At some point, you have to move beyond perpetually grieved and frustrated. And I'm just telling you, in this world, you cannot govern without aligning with people who weren't there with you from the start. And you're going to have to risk being betrayed. Just like, hey, if you want to get married, you want to find the right one, you're going to have to risk getting your heart broken. Hey, you want to start a business, you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you're going to have to risk bankruptcy and failure. You want to do anything meaningful in life, anything meaningful at all, beyond just be perpetually pissed off, you are going to have to risk tough things happening to you, and at times tough things will. And you're going to have to prove that why we fall down is so we can get back up. But at some point, you've got to move beyond, I just hang out on X all day. Now, these people aren't anonymous like the other folks because they're braver. They got more principles. But at some point, I got to move on between, you know what, I got to the 74th page of my Google search. I got to my 23rd question of my Grok AI questionnaire, and I found something here. And you got to rule. Because I don't know if you're paying attention. Someone's going to rule if you don't. They're not going to stop for your 23 layer questionnaire on Grok for AI to dig into the most, minutia aspects of someone's family line and tree. Or what they did last Thursday. You have to rule. And brother, I don't know what you think, Todd, but I think the jury is way still out on whether your folks are going to be able to pull this thing off. I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Listen, I think this is simple. These people were so far away from power for so long and thought they may never get it. They're glitching a little now. When they actually see that opportunity to put the perfect person in and they don't get it, they're just not used to this. But it's coming.
Let's check in on what's going on with the Middle East and what to do with Iran with Dr. Michael Youssef next. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, talking about our friends over at Fast Growing Trees. They've got the largest online nursery in the United States. Over 6,000 plants to fit any space, fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, so much more, indoor and outdoor. They've also got great plant experts that'll help you make sure that you get the exact kind of landscaping that you want with the exact kind of planting that you need. All right. And they've got the best deals every single day. But if you use and go through us, you'll get an additional 15% off your very first purchase when you use the code DACE at checkout when you go to fastgrowingtrees.com. That's fastgrowingtrees.com. Use the code DACE for 15% off. Use the code DACE to save today. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. That's code DACE at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase off their already everyday low prices when you go to fastgrowingtrees.com. Joined now by someone we've had on the show before. It's good to talk to him again, Dr. Michael Youssef. It's good to see you again, brother. How are you?
Oh, wonderful to see you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And, of course, you are the guy at the head of Leading the Way Ministries, and you have a particular background and interest in the Middle East. Why don't you go ahead and remind our audience just kind of your life story and
Sure.
the amount of ministry you've done there so that they can kind of be reminded that you kind of know the landscape here pretty well.
Thank you very much indeed. I was born in Egypt 77 years ago. I always celebrate my birthday with Israel in 1948, and after 19 years, I literally left the country with the clothes on my back in the 60s and ended up in Australia where I worked and trained and became ordained minister. And then I came to the United States in 77. And in the end of 78, I came to Atlanta, Georgia to head up a worldwide ministry and then planted a church here in Atlanta 38 years ago this week. And as I said, the rest is history. Leading the Way came as a result of that pulpit ministry, and we are now in 195 countries and 30 of the most spoken languages of the world, and 14,000 times a week that we broadcast somewhere in the world. And so I stay busy.
I would say, brother, you do. No doubt about it. You've got a brand new book out as well, God's Final Call, How the Book of Revelation Pulls Back the Veil on Current Events and Our Ultimate Future. So I want to discuss with you a debate that is happening on the right now. Right. And some very prominent voices are having this debate over Iran and what to do. Okay. Yeah. And I would essentially put, let's use two names that are very respected in our audience that people would know to kind of give them a face for the two camps. All right. And of course, as you know, Michael, within any camps, there's nuances and disagreements within those camps. So I'm oversimplifying, but just for the sake of argument. Okay. So in one camp, there would be a guy that we work with here every day at the Blaze, the great one, Mark Levin. Okay, and he would have the view that Iran cannot be trusted on any level whatsoever, given the fact they've been the largest purveyor of terrorism in the world for the last half a century. Allowing them to have any form of nuclear capability whatsoever is a terrible idea, and that even if you could for a while monitor that it would just be a benign form of energy for a source for the people, there are so many radical elements at work within that country that they could not possibly secure that level of technology and mass destruction weapon from their own from elements within their own population. So it has to be a zero tolerance policy no matter what. Fair? Is that a good representation of the one view? Okay.
Absolutely.
Then the other view, let's call this the Tucker Carlson view. All right. And the Tucker Carlson view essentially is we fought too many stupid wars in the Middle East already that no one can, in the end, can really now sit here decades later and justify. And yes, the Obama deal with Iran failed because Obama is weak and feckless, and that may be the most kind explanation. If anything, maybe he was actually trying to deconstruct the West on purpose. Okay. But in the case of Trump, he's a master deal maker. He puts America first. If anyone can cut a deal and hold Iran, accountable to it, to keep us out of war, or to stop a conflict with Netanyahu destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities that would spill over to the entire Middle East, it would be the guy that did the Abrahamic Accords, and we should trust him to cut a good deal and hold Iran accountable to avoid a stupid war. Now, that's the fairest description of those two sides I can give to be as objective as possible, okay? Sure. As someone that has done decades of ministry in this part of the world and knows it well and hails from this part of the world, where do you come down on this debate?
Well, thank you, Steve. As you know, I've written a lot of books on the subject, from the third jihad to the hidden enemy and many more, and I'm writing another one now. But look, both are right. I was asked by a very prominent person back in the 80s during the Iran-Iraqi war, and I'm not going to mention names, and they said, if you're sitting in my place, which one do you support? I said, I'll supply arms to both of them. Well, he looked at me and he said, I thought you were a reverend. I said, well, what's got to do with it? You asked me a political diplomatic question, and I gave you a truthful answer. Because in reality, neither the Shiite nor the Sunnis, and they're extremists in both sides, and when it comes to the West, they would unite in a heartbeat in order to destroy Western civilization. And so I am all for the destruction of the Iran nuclear weapons. But what about the Islamists who are rising in Europe, and they are determined to bring the Sharia to Texas even, and to parts of the United States? And so we got a much bigger picture, a much bigger problem. But as far as I'm concerned, if President Trump can make a deal with Iran to destroy their nuclear weapons or to surrender it like Libya did, great. But don't think the others are choir boys. And so we're dealing with really two sides of the same coin. And therefore, I have no problem with either side. I'm not saying we should start a war, but we need to be intelligent. We need to be thoughtful, and we realize who the enemy is. And to me, I have no problem with either. And I think Mark Levin is obviously concerned about Israel primarily, and that's why he focuses on Iran. Now, make no mistake about it, Iran is evil. They have done evil things. They have evil arms and evil reach in the whole of the Middle East. But there are some good people that we should not be alienating, like President Sisi of Egypt or King Abdullah of Jordan, and I'm talking about these two individuals in particular, and we need to be extremely careful to have them on side, because they are on side. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood that literally was brought into power in Egypt with the help of Obama. Make no mistake about it. He went to Egypt, he went to Cairo University, gave that speech. He told the president of Egypt, Mubarak at the time, I want the Muslim Brotherhood to be sitting in the front pew. He said, Mr. President, they are outlawed terrorist organization. He said, I don't care. And as a result of that, the Muslim Brotherhood rose and played
the Arab Spring. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they were behind the scenes. They were not really the ones who led the spring. They were very naive young people who really wanted freedom, and not naive in that regard, but they did genuinely want freedom. The Muslim Brotherhood came in and called them the donkeys of the revolution. And then they took over, and they brought the country to its knees in 12 months until God intervened. And I'm telling you, this is from a Christian point of view. Churches was packed 24/7 praying. And I believe God raised President Sisi in order to save Egypt from the horrors of Syria and Iraq and all the other problems in the Middle East. So we have a great opportunity to work with these two men. Instead of alienating them, we need to bring them on site and let them be the arms and the hands and the voice of moderation in the Middle East.
I think a lot of people don't understand that the Middle East is not, even the Muslim world is not monolithic. That Iran is not necessarily considered part of the Arab world, for example. They're kind of the redheaded stepchild. I've often theorized, Michael, that maybe the reason they've been so aggressive in purveying terrorism is trying to like prove themselves as like real Muslims, even though they're not Farsis, they're not Persians, that they're really part of they're trying to kind of give themselves some street cred. But I cannot imagine El-Sisi or King Abdullah are any more, excited about the prospect of a nuclear Iran than Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the difference is they have domestic political concerns where they cannot be seen as aggressively against it as Netanyahu is probably being encouraged by the Israeli people to be, right? So this does require a balancing act. That's kind of what I hear you saying. And that ultimately, if you do this in a tactful way, a lot of these Arab countries, let's throw the Saudis in there, they don't want a nuclear armed Iran any more than Israel does too, right? So how do you tactfully bring these various elements that sometimes are at odds but would be united against a nuclear Iran? How do you bring them all to the table?
Yeah, you can. But the problem also, you have another competitor on the scene, and that's Erdogan in Turkey. And they each, with the Iranians and Erdogan in Turkey, they both want to see themselves as the caliphates. They're the true successors to the Prophet of Islam. And that is a huge competition. They only unite together because there's an Arabic saying that my brother and I against my cousin, but our cousin against a stranger. And so the enemy is my enemy is my enemy. And so we got this huge tension, and that was not going to go away in a hurry. And we need not just intelligent diplomacy, but we need godly wisdom in dealing with that situation, because there are so many people who are suffering right now in the Middle East, persecution and difficulties. And so, yes, find out who has the most in common with us. And I just happen to have met with President Sisi more than once, and I know his heart, and I really believe that he hates Hamas as much as the Israelis do, simply because it was the Muslim Brotherhood whom he ousted from Egypt, which is the allies of Hamas. Hamas came during the Arab Spring through these tunnels into Sinai, came into Cairo. They killed all the prison guards, let the prisoners out during the chaos of the Arab Spring. And one of those prisoners was Morsi, who later became the president of Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood president. And so the complication of that world really requires a lot of wisdom, a lot of understanding, and not fall in the trap of taking sides with this one or this one, because they both designs are evil. And I'm going to tell you, the Islamists particularly who are working, these are Muslim Brotherhood in the United States and in Europe, their aim, and a stated aim, I'm not making it up, is to destroy Western civilization and bring Sharia. It's like a friend of mine in England said, well, if you want that, why don't you go back? But the problem is they want this is the ultimate victory over Western decadence and
this is their great commission, because they don't go back because Allah told them to bring it to us. That's why they don't go back. Yes.
Exactly.
I've got about 2 minutes here. If you were President Trump, would you sign off on Netanyahu destroying any Iran nuclear reactor? If you were Benjamin Netanyahu, would you go forth on behalf of the Israeli people and do it anyway, even without clearance from the tower at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? How would you answer those questions?
Yes, because it's a matter of survival for him. It's not a matter of, victory here and victory there. It's survival. And who is the outspoken country that says we want to destroy Israel? We really want to destroy Israel. And it's like the Israelis in the past in '67 war. They, saw Nasser kicking out the United Nations peacekeepers and closed the straits and was really going to throw them into the sea. But what did they do? They had to go and bomb all of the Air Force of the Egyptian Air Force and Syrian Air Force, and therefore I believe they were able to have victory. And so they need to do whatever they need to do, the Israelis I'm talking about, in order to survive, because there's so many bad actors in that neighborhood who want to kill them, want to destroy them. And so if Iran is the head of the snake, go for it.
Dr. Michael Youssef, you get his latest book, God's Final Call, How the Book of Revelation Pulls Back the Veil on Current Events and Our Ultimate Future. Good to see you again, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Steve. God bless.
All right, take care. You bet. All right, gentlemen, we got about 2 minutes here. This has been there's still no Pope announcement, by the way. You know what? You guys didn't hear that because Todd and I were talking off the air. White smoke. If you're just tuning in, we have white smoke at the Vatican. So they have not yet announced who the new Pope will be, but this conclave has just started yesterday. All right, so this is going a lot faster than I think a lot of people, including our own Todders, and intended. So let's wait and react until we get a name. Because this issue with Iran, Israel, this is causing a lot of consternation on the right. You're seeing friends go after each other on this one, even online, big names going at each other over this. So what'd you think of what Dr. Youssef had to say, guys?
Well, the way you framed it at the beginning with the options on the table, and when he said both, some issues are just a mess, and being too smart by half just lessens any ability to take anything you say seriously afterwards. I respect the man for saying that, people have been trying to untie this Gordian knot forever, and there are people on both sides of goodwill who have a point. And accepting those points doesn't mean you're getting any closer to it, but just belittling those points means you're probably getting further away. That's what was my starting point with everything he said thereafter.
Yes, and I think this conversation was proof positive about an axiom that we have discussed on the show, especially during the first Trump administration, where he was kind of miraculously able to get a lot of peace deals with a lot of countries we had just, previously maybe dismissed. But that axiom is, we need to make sure we are not dogmatic when it comes to foreign policy, because it is, especially in that area of the world, there's a lot of stuff going on. Let's just put it that way. It is a morass. There are a lot of complications here. In a lot of ways, if you are super dogmatic and the world has to be exactly the way that I want it to be right now or on my timeline, you have the possibility of setting off chains of events that you just cannot foresee happening. Look at what the U.S. did with Iraq. Look at the chain of events that set off. And that led from one thing to another, to ISIS, to a lot of destabilization across the entire region. So I think, as Todd said, there are a lot of people who feel very, very strongly, but are in charity, I think, trying to hash out what they believe the United States' role should be in the Middle East. And it's I find both the positions that you laid out there, or whether it's Levin or whether it's the Carlson positions, I find both of them, I'm just going to say it, compelling in various ways. I do too. In various ways. So
I do too.
We have to just get out of the kind of the early 2000s mindset of this is the way the world is. We are dictating everything, and it will be this way, because I just think there have been too many opportunities, too many examples that just does not work in the Middle East.
All right, we'll come back, and it might be perfectly timed for Theology Thursday. We may have an announcement of a new pope. At the very least, we'll continue in the book of Romans. Stay tuned. Back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here, testing out the new home wasp-free command for summertime as we're prepping the new studio. It's going to be a race to see who shows up first, the wasps in the old studio or the new studio. So just in case, the Blaze doesn't want to have to pay a massive settlement to my wife for killing me for doing this job. So they decided to just spend a smaller sum of money upgrading my home studio. So we're testing it out today, just in case we need it later here this summer. Todd and Aaron are here with me as well. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also, please, if you would, please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace show on YouTube. And then if you love the podcast version of the show, demonstrate that for us. Please leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platform that you prefer to use. Thank you if you have. Tens of thousands of you have. So thank you. And then hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow. And that'll make sure that every time we drop one of these new episodes, it drops right there in your podcast feed as well every single time. And this part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Raycon. Listen, you want to give Dad a Father's Day gift? I know we're talking about Mother's Day this weekend, but it's not too early to start talking about Father's Day as well. Treat Dad to a pair of everyday earbuds by Raycon, because he deserves to relax, recharge, enjoy his favorite music, podcast, like this one. But also in crystal clear sound. Raycon's everyday earbuds, they're the perfect gift for your dad, whether he's lifting big at the gym, busy with those endless work calls, jamming out to his favorite tunes that drive your mom mad, or more. Give your dad the gift of premium audio that goes where he goes. Raycon's latest model, by the way, better than ever. 32-hour battery life, multi-point connectivity that lets Dad pair with multiple devices all at once. And finally, Dad can wave goodbye to that tangled old pair of wired earbuds that he should have gotten rid of a long time ago. And speaking of battery, Raycon's quick charge function, just 10 minutes of charging yields 90 minutes of battery. All right, they come in a spectrum of vibrant colors, but your dad won't care because he's a dude. All right, just do like black or something. I mean, mine's blue, but just if your dad said, "Hey, get these in a favorite color," he may not be your dad. Just a thought, because he's just your dad. So just a plain color and a great sound that will cancel out your noise. Raycon does all those things. All right. So 15% off site-wide right now, and a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy. That's an amazing deal. When you go to buyraycon.com/Steve, 15% off site-wide right now. 15% off site-wide when you go to buyraycon, C-O-N, buyraycon.com/Steve. That's buyraycon.com/Steve. And also want to let you know, we have something to reveal to you, the cover of our next project coming out June the 3rd. Here it is, Richie Meets the Rainbow, a heartwarming tale of childhood enlightenment. And we've got an all-star cast of endorsements for this bad boy. We're going to be telling you more here soon about a special commemorative Pride edition that you're going to get access to by being a part of our show before the book goes on sale on June the 3rd. All right, so if you want to get more details on that, you just can't wait. RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com is where you can go. That's RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com. But there you can see young Richie, the young skull full of mush, anxious to learn what's it all about, and he will. In Richie Meets the Rainbow, a heartwarming tale of childhood enlightenment. Gentlemen, your thoughts on the cover of the new book? Aaron, let me start with you, because you kind of inspired this entire thing day with a suggestion. And I'm like, we need to turn that into a book. You're right. So, yes.
I inspired like 75% of what ended up being the title. Very specific ideas, too. I just want to get that in there. I will just say this book, the first draft that you read to me, I was like, please don't. Please, I didn't say this to you, but I'll say it to you now. I don't want any credit for that. I don't like this. This was not my idea. I'll write my own book. The final draft that you read for me, yeah, I'll take a little bit of credit for this because it's much more in line with the idea that I brought you around this time last year. It is really, really well done. And I think it makes a much more important and meta point, especially towards the end. And it'll be obvious to you when you read this book. But it is the first draft to the final draft. It was obviously some inspiration that went on.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. And had an outstanding team that helped us put this book together over the course of the last year. Special shout out to our literary agent, Tyler Bertola. She gets the book dedication this time around because, I mean, from going all the way to Hungary to finding the illustrator and helping me learn to rhyme words that I didn't even know I could, man. I was a poet. I didn't even know it the whole time. All right. So shout out to her for her outstanding contributions to this. So RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com is where you want to go. That's RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com. Todd, when we have white smoke, have they named yet a pope? Have you seen a name yet?
I have not. They have not. It should be any minute now. And the fact that it came, I didn't think it would come before Friday's show. I thought it would go into the weekend. I said if it does come before that, it's going to be really good or really bad.
Meaning what? By the way, this happened, I'm told, I just saw a report, this is on the fourth vote.
Yeah, this
They came to a pope on the fourth vote. Is that fast? Tell us.
Oh, yeah. Well, this came one vote sooner than Bergoglio becoming Pope Francis in 2013. And Pope Francis was the second place finisher in 2005 to Benedict, so a known of some sort. So the fact that with this very much larger and new College of Cardinals that didn't know each other, and yes, they had a slightly larger period after the funeral, but it really wasn't that much larger. I mean, I think we're going to be seeing some Holy Spirit power or some darkness, and I don't know.
Aaron, our plan here is to try to break in here live if they come up with an announcement here while we're still doing the show in real time, correct?
That's correct, yes. And I think if we just break into the Vatican media's public coverage for commentary, briefly for commentary when the new pope is introduced, I think we will be golden.
It's going to be, forgive my ignorance, it's going to be in English, right? So the audience can understand it?
Well, what have you been watching, Todd?
Well, the commentary, yes, has been in English. So, yes, you will hear Americans talking about it in English, but they'll announce habeas papam, we have a pope, and it'll go from there.
So, just to reiterate here, this is a little bit like a quick verdict in by a jury in a contentious case, right? That either
I think that's a great way of putting it.
Some piece of exculpatory evidence that just undermined the entire prosecution, or this defendant better not make any future plans. That's kind of where we're at, one extreme or another, is what you're thinking. A clear direction for the church is coming here with this quick of a response. That's kind of what I hear you saying as a Protestant.
Now,
is that accurate?
That you're interpreting what I said accurately. Now, I may be wrong about all of it. And again, there's a handful of names if they come across, I will have a good gut instinct one way or the other. There's many of them I won't. But yes, that you are picking up what I'm laying down on this.
And I also want to make sure, whether you're irreligious, you're not a Christian, whether you're someone who puts the fun in fundamentalism like I do, okay, as a Protestant evangelical, given this would be a momentous event regardless, just because of the amount of souls that will be inspired one way or the other by this selection, okay? But if you look at the particular moment that we are in here in the West, we essentially have a one-nation safe harbor of Western civilization called America. That's really all that's left now. You have some of the former Eastern Bloc countries.
Correct.
Like a former Pope's Poland, like Hungary, where I had to go to get my book illustrated. And when you see it here in about a month, you're going to see why we had to go to Poland or Hungary to get the book illustrated. Okay. You are seeing some of these former Eastern Bloc countries that are kind of nascent democracies, republics. They're only they're not even really one generation quite yet removed from the Soviet Union. In the late 80s, early 90s. And so you're trying to see them. They're still kind of emerging countries and cultures. And the steadfast nations that predominantly make up a NATO, for example, in the West, Canada to our north, and then in the southern hemisphere, Australia, New Zealand, nations that were founded as vestiges of Western civilization, which is why they carry a lot of our customs, language, etc. You've seen them all succumb to darkness / wokeness, either completely or you're watching the immersive drowning take place as we speak, right? So what happens here in terms of steering the ship of Western civilization, I think this announcement will impact every soul within the sound of my voice. I think I can conservatively say that. How? Depends on who we announce or who they announce. But given where the West is at, I don't see how you can come to really any other conclusion. And as I have pointed out before, since Roe versus Wade in our country, whoever has won the Catholic vote has won the presidential election every single time except once. And that was the first time in over 100 years, in 2000, that someone won the popular vote but didn't win the Electoral College. All right, so for 50 years, whoever's won the Catholic vote has won the presidential election in our country every single time. So this will have a lot to say about what's to come here in the immediate future for what's left anyway of Western civilization. You gentlemen have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that, that's fleshed out specifically in this election of Pope John Paul II, just a mere matter of months after Pope John Paul I was elected and then died, and them going back to the well again, perhaps having a sense of the Holy Spirit asking to move radically, picking the first non-Italian pope, and I think it was something like 450 years, to address the kind of things that Steve is talking about. As heroic as Reagan and Thatcher were, without that Polish Eastern Bloc Pope fearlessly in the face of the communist Soviet Leviathan. Who knows how that goes? But those three were viewed as the pillars of the Churchills of their time. And that's how much could be at stake once again in all manner, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's moral. Steve's absolutely right in terms of understanding whether you're Catholic or not, what could be at stake.
Yeah, this is just in as well. D.C. Judge James Boasberg has issued a universal injunction blocking the Cardinals' election of the new pope. Let me be the 1,000th person to make that joke. Here we go. We've got something, actually. It looks like the windows are opening.
Do we?
Yes, they are.
Who is that?
All right, let's go to the Vatican.
That's the guy who declares habeas papam.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. Habemus papam.
That means we have a pope, right, Todd?
Correct. And this doesn't go on for very long.
Eminentissimum, ac reverendissimum Dominum, Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost. Qui sibi nomen imposuit Leonem decimum quartum.
Can you translate this, Todd, as a Catholic?
No.
Okay.
He is still an ugly American. Don't forget that. Yes. A very Catholic one, but an ugly American.
What kind of Catholic can't even speak Latin, Todd? Come on now.
All right, so what's the other window opening here, Todd? What's this mean?
I think they're just coming out to see, to witness it.
Okay.
Who don't you see? I don't see.
I was just going to ask you that. Who don't you see there?
I don't see Sarah in that window, but he's easier to pick out. And forgive me, there's only a handful of them I will recognize by sight.
Isn't that on the right there? Who is that? That looks recognizable. I know this is sacrilege, but the betting markets, well, I don't want to step on the moment.
It's not sacrilege to the Catholics. It is to our side, but not to them. We're building dramatic effect here.
Hopefully the Vatican doesn't sue us.
That would be something.
Yeah.
Have Todd testify against us. I tried to warn these heathens.
No, I'm going to say it was Todd's idea.
Yes.
Are they chanting Parolin?
That would not be good.
That would not be good. That name would not be good?
No,
Okay.
he's the current Secretary of State. Well, I would be concerned.
Then so would we. Basically, our thoughts, we're in a mind meld here. You're like Spock.
That was the
our
name
thoughts
that
are your thoughts, and your thoughts are our thoughts.
That was the name that I was going to say. The betting markets for Parolin shot up after the white smoke came out.
Well, maybe whoever's got him at 4-1 are chanting and screaming, thinking, I like that payday. Okay.
Todd, just selfishly, do you
It's
have
amazing in this day and age, you can keep something like this quiet.
Do I selfishly have what?
Do you selfishly have a name that you would prefer?
Oh, Sarah would be.
Well, Sarah, but papal name.
Oh, well, yeah. If it was me, as you know, I've already promised Steve, it would be Pope Nehemiah. That would be.
Not Pope Vinegar?
No.
Did you guys see this exit poll from the conclave?
No.
Whoever they ended up picking that will be revealed here, they won over 66% of males aged 45 to 79. Did very well on that demographic.
Oh, I just realized you're joking me. I fell for it. I was like, you guys do that? Man, this is like really involved. Yeah.
I also don't.
Tell me about the American dude, Prevost. Do you see him?
I mean, I can't even imagine.
Somebody just sent this. I'm not going to say that in case it's wrong. Depending on who this is, do you think we should just go back to Romans 1? In case it's really disappointing.
Oh, gosh. I'm glad you said that.
I appreciate
that. Dayshow@gmail.com. Dayshow@gmail.com. Leave me alone.
There's some good
All right?
humor out there.
Leave me alone. Okay.
I just saw Stuart Mandel say, whoever the pick is, what's his face from the NFL Network? That guy will be mad that it's not Shedeur Sanders.
Oh, yeah. Mel Kiper.
Mel Kiper will be mad.
Oh, man.
These Catholics have been wrong for 500 years, man. They never get it right.
Boy, I thought we'd see it by now.
All right, we're still waiting.
We are still waiting. Just don't want to put the video up there as long as we possibly can. We are watching, though.
What?
Yes.
Cardinal Robert F. Prevost has been elected as the first American pope in history. That's the Blaze reporting that.
God, I can't believe it.
Holy cow.
Robert F. Prevost. I've never heard of him.
Have I?
An American cardinal that you've never even heard of, Todd?
Well, I mean, there's 10 American cardinals.
Yeah, no, this is being reported now.
Catholic cardinal, sovereign of the Vatican City State. So he's not an archbishop in America.
Prevost.
He served as prefect of the dicastery for bishops and president of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America since 2023. Well, see, this is...
He was born in Chicago. Alma mater is Villanova.
He served as bishop in Peru from 2015 to 2023. Became a naturalized citizen of Peru.
Boy, this is completely off the board.
Yeah.
I've never even seen this name.
They're saying Pope Leo XIV now that I'm seeing some reports on this now.
Okay.
Yep.
Pope Leo XIV is the name that he will go by, is what reports from all over the world now are saying, as we are still awaiting for something official from the Vatican.
Born in 55.
So that would make him 70, 80 now? No. He was 45.
45 plus 70.
That would make him about 70.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An Augustinian.
Is that good?
Bachelor of Science in Math from Villanova in 1977. Then decided to become a priest.
Sorry, this is live broadcasting.
Yeah.
Yep. I think the audience can bear through the,
Yes. Wow, this
the
is
most important
that is
announcement on planet Earth this week.
Crazy.
Okay.
And I don't, let me go to my X feed and see what. Hey, you're right, I'm seeing Leo the 14th.
There was a story in CBS News yesterday about this guy potentially being.
Really?
Yeah. Let me read this story. This
The
is from
Vatican
CBS.
News is reporting it. So.
Let's find out what Grok thinks. I'm going there right now.
Of the 266 popes who have led the Catholic Church, not one of them have been from the United States, while the relative youth of the nation means fewer than 20 of those men served after the U.S. Declaration of Independence in 1776. One prominent U.S. bishop has a possible explanation for the lack of an American leader. Robert Barron, that's not what this is. They might have just...
All right. So, here is what Grok says in response. This is Elon Musk's all-powerful AI. Says in response to my question, first of all, make sure we agree I asked a good question. Is Robert Prevost a conservative or liberal on social issues and theology? Is that a good question?
Yeah.
You guys okay with that question?
Yeah.
Todd, you all right with that question? Is that fair?
I'm going to hold, only because I don't really know if I can trust Grok yet, not because I can't trust you.
See, I was about to say, as
we
long
haven't
as
gotten to what Grok said. It's my question, okay? Is
Yeah,
my
the-
question
The
okay?
question
The way I
is
worded
okay.
the question.
Yes, the question is okay. Oh, here he comes.
Okay. All right. That's the first American Pope, Pope Leo XIV, Robert Prevost, elected on the 4th ballot today in Rome.
The first Pope Leo is one of the few popes to be known as the Great.
So Todd, will he speak? What's the tradition here?
He will give a short address.
Okay. I presume in Latin?
Yes.
Okay.
But then again, I don't know that everybody's fluency with Latin outside the particular ceremonial rites are conversational enough. I don't know to give a full speech, so I don't know.
What's the crowd chanting, Todd, for people that don't know?
Or is it just his name?
I can't make it out.
I can't make it out either. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to be up against the break here in about 3 minutes. So let's hope it is a short address so we can hear it. But Todd, I mean, do you have any just initial feelings on this as a Catholic as you're watching all this take place?
I'm deeply uncertain. Here he goes.
La pace sia con tutti voi. Fratelli, sorelle carissimi, questo è il primo saluto del Cristo risorto, il buon pastore che ha dato la vita per il gregge di Dio. Anch'io vorrei che questo saluto di pace entrasse nel vostro cuore, raggiungesse le vostre famiglie, a tutte le persone, ovunque siano, a tutti I popoli, a tutta la terra. La pace sia con voi.
Do you have any idea what he's saying, Todd?
None. I don't know why they don't have subtitles. Most people don't speak Latin.
This is very interesting from John Daniel Davidson. I want to mention here.
Yeah, please.
At some point after we hear from the
Go
Pope.
ahead. Go ahead.
John Daniel Davidson says 2 nights ago, remember from the Federalist, author of Pagan America that we had on last year and rocked our worlds. He said 2 nights ago, Bishop Barron said his mentor, Cardinal George, said that the Catholic Church would never have an American Pope until America went into political decline. And John Daniel Davidson over at the Federalist just tweeted that out about 5 minutes ago.
Quella voce debole ma sempre coraggiosa di Papa Francesco che benediva Roma. Il Papa che benediva Roma dava la sua benedizione al mondo intero, quella mattina del giorno di Pasqua. Consentitemi di dar seguito a quella stessa benedizione. Dio ci vuole bene, Dio vi ama tutti e il male non prevarrà. Siamo tutti nelle mani di Dio.
There's 14 Pope Leos, so it's hard to say what's inspired him. But again, the first Pope Leo the Great, is responsible for negotiating with and turning back Attila the Hun. At that time, had to take because of the fall of the Roman Empire, had to take a great role in all Roman affairs. So, I mean, he didn't go small on a name.
Hopefully that means something. Great, because it usually does when they try to pattern their names after something they want to emulate or they have a great deal of affection for, don't they, Todd?
Yes, and I'll try to find a translation of the speech while we're off.
And then we'll come back and we'll see what Grok has to say about his background within the conclave before becoming the next pope. We'll get to that here in just a moment. The weather's heating up, and that means your nighttime bedroom temperature could do the same, but you don't have to worry about that if you've got the temperature regulating comfy sheets from our friends over at Miracle Made. They came on board a couple of summers ago, man, right as we were in the midst of the absolute hottest July in Iowa I can ever remember. Brutal. And yet that entire summer I didn't have to augment the AC with the ceiling fan one single time at night. Because of Miracle Made sheets, man. I love these things.
Okay, and you will too. All right, with the silver-infused fabrics inspired by the likes of NASA. They also, by the way, that same technology that they use to help your thermoregulating all night long also helps to kill off a lot of the bacteria on your sheets too, to keep them cleaner and longer and fresher too. So upgrade your sleep as the weather heats up. Go to trymiracle.com/Deace. That's trymiracle.com/Deace. And if you use the promo code Deace, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set, save an extra 20% as well. I mean, you're going to save 40% just if you go to trymiracle.com/Deace. But if you use that code Deace, you'll save an additional 20% and get a free 3-piece towel set as well. Trymiracle.com/Deace. Use the code Deace for the big savings and the phenomenal product you will not regret. Trymiracle.com/Deace. And speaking of the code Deace, if you want to be a subscriber to Blaze TV and help us to continue to grow, continue to push back against the spirit of the age. Right now, we're offering it to you for just $8 a month, the price of one of those nice big cup of coffees that you buy, those designer coffees you're buying every day. That's just $8 a month, 26 cents a day for a year. Get $20 off with the promo code Deace at blazetv.com/Deace. Promo code Deace at blazetv.com/Deace. That way you don't miss any of our overtimes, any of Glenn Beck's specials, all of the other exclusive content we do here at Blaze TV. blazetv.com/Deace, code Deace. All right. Before I get to some things that I've found during the break, I just want to ask, Todd, have you found the translation of Pope Leo XIV, Robert Prevost, the American? Have you found a translation of his remarks? No?
I have not. No,
okay.
I have not.
All right. So because I wanted to ask that before we went to some other, just hear what he had to say directly, okay? Let me start here with what Grok says about Robert Prevost when I asked. Is Robert Prevost a conservative or a liberal on social issues and theology? Grok says, Prevost is a complex figure whose views on social issues and theology don't neatly align with a single ideological label. His positions drawn from his public statements and actions reflect a blend of traditional Catholic teaching and openness to pastoral flexibility, often in line with Pope Francis's vision. On social issues, Grok says that Prevost supported Pope Francis' pastoral shift, allowing divorced and civilly remarried Catholics to receive communion on certain conditions. And this aligns with the more progressive or flexible approach. His LGBTQ issues are more nuanced. In 2012, he expressed concern about Western culture promoting sympathy for beliefs and practices that contradict the gospel, specifically citing the homosexual lifestyle, and was opposed to same-sex families adopting children. However, regarding the 2023 Vatican document, which permits non-liturgical blessings for same-sex couples, which we discussed on this show at the time, Todd, as you'll recall, Prevost showed mild support, emphasizing the authority of local bishops' conferences to interpret and apply it contextually due to cultural differences. On social justice and liberation theology. That's a term outside of a few shows like this one many of you have probably never heard before. Yet Grok knows it. Prevost's extensive missionary work in Peru suggests a strong commitment to social justice. His alignment with Francis's emphasis on integral human development and participation in the Synod of Synodality suggests sympathy for themes akin to liberation theology. This leans towards a more progressive stance. On theology, he emphasizes that bishops must primarily proclaim Jesus Christ and communicate the beauty and joy of knowing Jesus, prioritizing pastoral closeness over rigid doctrinal enforcement. On doctrinal authority, he supports his support for local bishops' conferences having doctrinal authority to interpret documents, a decentralized theological approach, which some conservatives may view as liberal. Todd could probably speak more to that when the time comes. On traditional Catholic identity, Grok says, despite his progressive leanings on some issues, Prevost remains grounded in traditional Catholic frameworks. His Augustinian background and canon law expertise suggests a respect for tradition, even as he navigates contemporary challenges. In terms of contextual factors, Grok notes that he has strong alignment pretty comprehensively with Pope Francis on lots of different fronts. And then in its summary, Grok says that Cardinal Prevost cannot be strictly categorized as conservative or liberal, as his positions reflect a synthesis of traditional Catholic theology and progressive pastoral instincts. On social issues, he leans progressive in his commitment to social justice, support for synodality, and openness for pastoral accommodations, and to a lesser extent, same-sex couples. However, his theological outwork retains conservative elements, particularly in his wariness of secular cultural trends and grounding in Catholic traditional moral teaching. His alignment with Pope Francis's vision, emphasizing mercy, synodality, and the poor, places him closer to a moderate liberal stance in the context of contemporary Catholicism. And this assessment is based on Prevost's public statements and roles, acknowledging that labels like conservative and liberal oversimplify the nuances of Catholic theology and social teaching, which is true. Okay? That's true. So what about things Prevost has said himself? All right? Now, there is no blue, that's funny. There's a blue check mark here now. There was not, guys, I'm not kidding you, there was not a half an hour ago when I looked at this. So there is a blue check mark there now. His Twitter following was at just under 7,500 when I found it about a half an hour ago as we were talking during his address. It's now up to about 19,000. So they've gotten this. So now I guess we are confirming that this is his Twitter feed. Okay. His last tweet was on April the 14th, and was a repost of something tweeted from a gentleman named Rocco Palma, who I do not know. And Rocco was tweeting about, and I quote here from his tweet, "The Fed's illicit deportation of a U.S. resident, once an undocumented Salvadorian himself." And of course, we're talking, about the MS-13 gang member is what this is about. This was his last tweet on April the 14th. On February 3rd, actually he did this twice. Both on he had two tweets. Let me see. Two tweets, and he tweeted only twice in a week, twice in mid-February, from the 3rd to the 14th to Valentine's Day. His only two tweets during the first 2 weeks of February were both criticizing our Catholic Vice President J.D. Vance for his idea, or for what, Todd, what's the Catholic term for what J.D. Vance was advocating?
Ordo amoris, is it? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah. So Robert Prevost on this account, which now does have a blue check mark, because when we were coming back from break, I was going to say I don't know for sure that this belongs to him, but this blue check mark appeared pretty quick. Okay. It was not there, guys, 10 minutes ago, unless I'm blind. It wasn't there. So J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. This was something retweeted from Robert Prevost on February 3rd, and then he reemphasized this again on February 12th. Pope Francis's letter, J.D. Vance's Ordo Amoris, and what the gospel asks all of us on immigration. All right. So let me just stop there for now, because we're already up to only about 8 minutes left here in the show. And I'll just open it up. Todd, starting with you, man. This is your home team. What do you think? What are your instincts telling you?
My instincts, I'll in the moment, there is a feeling of disappointment. But I was also not naive about everything that was ultimately going to be weighed and balanced. People will instantly react to this as the fact that he became a cardinal just a couple years ago and was appointed to run the dicastery of the bishops, which helps select the bishops worldwide and oversees them. Plays very readily into those that think, the Pope picks most of these people, and thus people fell in line. We're going to have to wait and see. What your contention, Steve, did you say it on or off air about we wouldn't have an American Pope until America had fallen as a leader?
I said that on the air before the last break. That came from John Daniel Davidson. He had heard that from a Vatican source, yeah.
In light of what's going on with immigration, I think that we have reason, based on the things you just said, for concern that that's exactly what's going on here, that a time and place has been chosen by the church what it might view as permanently evening the playing field. Now, it may say we're not picking any one nation over any one nation, but we are about evening out power imbalances. Again, the language you read, Steve, that about the poor, the marginalized. I mean, that is clearly a scriptural message, but it's also been one that's been bastardized for all manner of causes. This is stream of consciousness here, but the way you put it, Stephen, asked me, what's your gut on this so far? It's it's disappointment, and B, there strikes me as some reason to be concerned, and I'm just going to have to let you guys chat about it while I think a little bit more.
Todd, can I real quick follow up with you with an analogy?
Well, sure.
Do you remember when Mike Johnson got elected speaker? And right from the jump, we were inundated with born-again Christian, evangelical, biblical worldview. He does all these interviews. I'm a biblical worldview guy. And you remember my first reaction was, I have never heard of this guy in my entire life. Never heard of him once.
Right.
How is it possible? I mean, guys, you can count on, you're not going to get to all your fingers and toes before you can count on how many people have talked to more evangelicals and spent more time organizing evangelicals around the country the last 15 years than me. And I'm like, how is it possible? I didn't even know there was a guy named Mike Johnson in Congress, let alone he was like this adamantly forthright about similar traditions. And now he's the Speaker of the House. And remember, we brought Bob on like right after that because I'm like, hey, man, let me talk to one person I know that's even way more connected than me. And I asked Bob on there, hey, do you know who the heck Mike Johnson is? Never heard his name in his life. Guys, I mean, again, there's 5-6 people in the entire Christian right that run, advocacy organizations that raise more money than Bob does. Maybe, tops. He had no clue who Mike Johnson was. And I'm like, how is it possible you can represent my viewpoint, given how many connections I have, how many connections Bob and I combined have, and we have no idea who you are? I'm getting that kind of vibe from this. Like, how is it possible we can have an American Pope and a guy like Todd who lives and breathes this stuff, has no clue who the guy is or anything, and he comes out of nowhere. He wasn't featured in any betting market or anything at all. You think it's a bad analogy? Go ahead.
No, because that's actually how it's possible. I would have been utterly shocked if it would have been Cardinal Dolan or Cardinal Burke or this is exactly how it happens, I think. And it's not, listen, there's how many 135 cardinals? I mean, they're across the entire world. Most faithful Catholics do not know all of their names. Most faithful Catholics, I guarantee you, didn't know who Karol Wojtyla was from Poland before he became Pope John Paul II. So I don't think it quite works that way. But if it was going to be an American, it would be somebody like this, I think, who was not... more of a quote-unquote man of the world who could be sold in a different... who could not possibly be sold under the banner of the flag.
Okay. Life News, by the way, just tweeted 30 minutes ago. Cardinal Robert Prevost is who Pope Francis met with right before outspoken pro-life Texas Bishop Joseph Strickland was removed from his duties for calling Joe Biden a, quote, fake Catholic.
That's a terrible sign. Terrible sign.
Here are a few retweets. I hope this is not his account. I'm at that point now. He retweeted back in 2020, we continue to pray for, this is from Bishop Burbidge, but Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, said, continue to pray for Mr. George Floyd and his family. May all the hatred, violence, and prejudice be eradicated. Retweeted Democrat Senator Chris Murphy. To my colleagues, I don't know what Chris Murphy is talking about, but this was back in 2017. To my colleagues, your cowardice and to act cannot be whitewashed by thoughts and prayers. I'm guessing that was after a mass shooting. Pope Leo also retweeted this from 2020. May God give comfort to the family of George Floyd in this time of anguish. Worked hard to end racism. That was from Bishop Michael Olson. also retweeted the same account you just mentioned a little bit ago. Bad hombres line from Trump fuels racism and nativism. Retweeted Sister Helen Prejean, I stand with the dreamers and all the people who are working towards an immigration system that is fair, just, and moral. He's at least checking a lot of the buzzwords.
Oh, you're being kind on that front. Been reading specifics.
That is just...
There's red flags all over the place. There's just...
Sorry, this is just...
You don't have to whitewash it. This just sounds... It sounds like you're just reading Pope Francis's Twitter feed. That's what it sounds like.
Very much the mold of Pope Francis, putting it kindly.
Well, remember what I said about, I mean, technically, if you're 70 years old, what generation are you in? I mean, are you right on the border, or or is it still fully boomer? Yeah, it would be still fully boomer.
Yep, you're fully boomer.
I just remember
you're fully boomer to your late 50s. Yep.
My late my deacon friend said, my whole generation needs to die before this is fixed, and he may have been way more of a prophet than I even gave him credit for. At the time, they just were born at a time and programmed in such a way that this is, unless you're apparently born in Africa or Hungary, this is what you get. So,
yeah, 60 to 80 is usually considered boomer. Is usually considered the boomer generation.
All the way down to 60.
Our generation's actually 60 to 80.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But everybody of good faith, like Steve and Aaron and many of you out there, and then the people who are clearly not of good faith that wake up every day talking about Antichrist and nonsense like that. But I mean, if this continues, uh-oh.
Well, that didn't go the way we had planned. We'll have overtime for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. For the rest of you, we're back editing it tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, and right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.